Welcome to the Love, Law, and Life Makeover Podcast, a go-to for hope, faith, and joy in changing your life. I'm Neil Presley Cox, lawyer, speaker, and author of Hope Lines. I have an easy-to-find website, neilpresleycox.com. You can't miss it. And a nice welcome for my presenter and co-host, Kelsy Gibbs.
Today, we are here to talk about this Hope line.
I've got one here too, just for ease of reference.
Yes.
But I can't do anything with it unless I put my glasses on.
All right, so you can read.
Yes.
So Neil, just for our audience, do you mind just maybe giving us a quick background on like who you are? Like, who is Neil Cox?
So my name is Neil Presley Cox. I really like the middle name, so I always throw it in, Neil Presley Cox. And I used to always say that I'm a lawyer, but now I decided just to say that I'm a husband and father and a lawyer and a lot of other things too. A grandfather, an older guy that has to wear glasses when he talks to people and wants to look at his book. But really, I'm just somebody that went through my own trials and tribulations as an alcoholic and pothead and very selfish person who had to find my way to survive in this world without just being somebody that had no self-respect.
And so what was it that really, because you've gone through a lot, just like in just a little you just said, there's a lot going on there. What was it that you would say that really inspired you to start writing this book?
Well, I always wanted to write. And when I was a kid, I was either out running and being athletic, or I was thinking and reading. And those are really the two things that I did. Besides try to flirt with gals once I learned how to do that, but that's another subject. I mean, literally, I was either indoors reading and thinking about things, or I was out running around. And so I've always been interested in reading and writing, and it's always been something I was good at. And it's the reason I got through law school, because being able to read, process information, and then regurgitate it, write, and think a little bit were the ingredients necessary to get through law school. But I've always wanted to write about things that I see with people, what's hurting them, what's helping them, what makes them do what they do. It's such a mystery. What makes people commit crimes, what makes people drink themselves to death, what makes one person get help and one person not. All those sorts of human interest things were always a part of what I sat around thinking about. And so I began writing about 10 years ago because I always wanted to do it. And I just decided I'm not going to retire from my law degree, my law job, because I have to make money, but I'm going to do what I want to do the most, which is to start writing. And so that's what led to the writing as a hobby. And now it's just, I don't even like the word hobby. It's a passion, and it's what I want to do even when I'm in the midst of earning a living.
Yeah. Wow. Because your writing is very heartfelt. And in fact, a lot of the reviews that I was reading about that talk about specifically talking about the heart that you put into this book. So yeah, I definitely would have to agree. This feels more like a passion than a hobby for sure, because it's incredible. Everything from the stories that you can see yourself in, you can put yourself in these people's shoes. You actually like put different perspectives on there. Like, here's the perspectives of the parents of, where they've gone through a divorce and they're having to relocate their child. And then in the next chapter, you give the perspective of the child, which is incredible, because then you're able to see multiple sides. It's very multi-dimensional book that you've got going on here. Um, Now I know earlier when we were talking, we had talked a little bit about talking about anxiety. Was there anything in particular that really like you wanted to bring up or talk about in terms of anxiety with specifically for the cases for the people that you work with?
Well, in the last few years, I have witnessed from other people and myself that our society is producing massive anxiety. And and part of my story is, of course, that I always had a little bit of anxiety and depression, and it grew to the point that I had to be intoxicated 7 days a week to function. And so I had to finally hit my own bottom and get some help for it, and I did. But I've just witnessed people suffering so tremendously these days with anxiety, and I think it is a thread that permeates every aspect of their lives. And so it's just become something that I've sort of made my mission to help people with their anxiety, because they can't deal with anything else until they get their anxiety level down enough to where they can kind of process how they got into the trouble they're in, or into the relationship problem they're in. If they're operating on high anxiety, then they're probably either physically, spiritually, emotionally sick. They may be intoxicated all the time, like I was, to cope with it. They may be extremely avoidant and doing something else, but they're not in a place to actually take a piece of learning, just a little tool, and start to apply it until that anxiety level goes down to a little bit of a manageable level, to where they're able to process and input output.
And just for like our perspective, how does how do you personally experience anxiety when you're going through that?
It's anxiety is an interesting thing because it's like an iceberg. A lot of the time you're not aware of it. It's in the subconscious, and of course we don't want to think that we're feeling anxiety. We don't want to consciously think about negative feelings and emotions. So it's a normal human tendency to try to push it down. And so, sometimes it will bubble up and you can feel yourself nervous or anxious, or you can feel yourself becoming frustrated. Sometimes it's so powerful that it's almost like electricity, and it surges through your body and you can feel it radiate into your hands even. But a lot of the time it's just a subtle thing that you have to sort of stop running, stop moving so fast, stop the smartphone, and just be quiet for 30 seconds, and you'll feel where you're at in life. But if you never stop, you're not aware of it, and so you have a less ability to do something about it.
Yeah, because and um I was speaking with someone and they were talking about you can decide on your own and make choices, like you could put the cell phone down and kind of be still and figure it out. You can decide to do that, you can be inspired to do that, or you can have like some big tragedy happen in your life that makes you stop and kind of pay attention and get your life on the right track. So you
So
can either,
true, so true.
so what was there something like that happened to you? Which one was that for you?
Well, the one that you describe as you can do that, you can practice yourself. I call that the educational variety of growth. But the other one, the tragedy or the trauma, I think trauma happens to every human. But for me, I had a lot of smaller ones, but the one that I think was the most defining moment was I had already blown a marriage with having to be intoxicated all the time. And my brand of being intoxicated all the time is to be a very selfish person. So, when I get off work, if I'm getting intoxicated, then I'm not going to go home and see what my wife needs or what my family needs, but I'm going to go pursue what Neil wants. And so I ruined my first marriage with that. And then I met Anna, and we got married rather kind of a fast, happy blitz. And she's very young, and we both decided we were going to live a sober life. And she was pregnant, and we decided we are going to live a sober life and keep our family strong, and do everything in our power to keep the dramas that are breaking families up out of our family. And so I said to her, sure, let's do that. And I decided to stay sober, and I did for a while on my own willpower. It was miserable, and a lot of times I was secretly thinking about getting intoxicated, pot and alcohol. But I stayed sober for a while, and then suddenly my alcoholic brain decided it was time to do those things again, because that's what alcoholics do, is they think about it until they get so miserable they do it. And Anna didn't know I'd made that choice, and so we were in Seattle, and I started drinking and smoking pot and trying to keep it from her, and we had our baby with us, and it was just an unpleasant, very sad evening that I shouldn't have been walking around town trying to lead my wife and 1-month-old child in Seattle, but I did. And then the next day, as we're heading home, this alcoholic had decided that when I got back home, I was going to get some marijuana and just start back on the marijuana maintenance program, be a 7-day-a-week pot smoker. And my wife realized what had been going on, and she started crying, and she started just sobbing, saying to me, I can't believe what's happening. She says, I'm going to wind up raising our baby all by myself. You're going to start getting high and drinking all the time, and everything's just going to fall apart, and we're going to wind up breaking out. And she's sitting there as we're driving, sobbing. And I did what alcoholics do. I lied, and I said, no, everything's fine, hon. You don't need to worry. No, it's not going to be like that. It'll be fine. All the while in my mind, having a plan to get some more marijuana. And her heart is just so pure that she just continued to cry. And it was like she wasn't going to be buying into that kind of a lie. And something just broke, this resistance inside of my heart as she's crying. It just broke loose, like the floodgates, the dam just opened up, and honesty just poured out of me. And I started crying with her. And I said, I don't know if this AA, this Alcoholics Anonymous thing is going to work for me or not. I'd been to a couple of meetings and never really tried it. Never really put my heart into it. But I told her, I said, I'm going to go back to Clarkson, and I'm going to get an AA sponsor, and I'm going to work that program, and I'm really going to put my heart into it. And I'm looking at her, crying with her. And I meant it. And that's just what I did when I got back to town, is I got an AA sponsor, and I got serious in recovery, and the craving stopped, and I got sober, and I haven't had a drink since. And that was, I think, my trauma moment, or my awareness moment, where I was just so alive with something real and good. I call it a miracle. That, to me, that was a miracle, because my whole life, since the time I was 16 and discovered pot, my whole life was focused on wanting to smoke pot, wanting to be high, wanting to escape, wanting to live for myself. A long answer, but that's what happened.
No, that's absolutely beautiful. That's exactly what I was looking for, because something that you said was really interesting, because it sounded like your decision to stop smoking pot and to get sober, it didn't seem like that was enough. What seemed like it was the fact that you had decided with your wife, you and Anna decided together, you wanted to be intentional about the way you raised your family.
Yes, that's exactly right. It wasn't just that I woke up one day and, oh, Neil's going to be good now. No, that wasn't it at all. It came from outside of my heart. Her heart and her deep spiritual connection and realness just came into my heart, and I call that a miracle. And then all of a sudden I had this tremendous willingness to actually try to do something about my problem. It's a beautiful thing, really. I mean, without that, I would just have been a selfish person, a pig, Not that I'm holding myself up as a completely unselfish person, but I do make a day-to-day effort to put other people in the forefront of, what can I do today? How can I be of use? Instead of, well, at 5:30, I want to do this. And at 6:30, I want to go flirt with this person. And at 7, I'm going to get high again. And maybe I'll come home to my family at 8:30 or 9,
Mm-hmm. Well, and in your book, you talk a lot about spirituality and God and whatnot. I guess, what does that, is there a way you can kind of like condense that or explain what you mean by that?
That's a very difficult thing to do because, if you look at it logically, if there really is a higher power, if there is a God or a spirit or something that's bigger than us that actually can help us, then me being just one person cannot define that. It's just too big. So it's almost a mistake to even try to define it. But I do have faith now, whereas I didn't before, that there actually is a loving higher power. It wouldn't be helpful if I had a higher power that wasn't loving, because that would just be a dark, it wouldn't be heart to heart, one person helping another, but rather it would still be a selfish plane if you had a higher power that wasn't loving and didn't care for us to, that wasn't love, that didn't want us to be better. So I believe that there is a heaven, that there is a loving higher power that we have the ability to connect with if we're open to it and put aside our ego and work towards that. And sometimes you can get that through another person. Sometimes you can get it walking in nature. Sometimes you can get it by having a trauma event. Sometimes you can get it by just studying about whatever you believe in terms of spirit.
So it doesn't sound like it's very predictable.
No, I think it's very mysterious. And I think when people try to tell you exactly what our heavenly father or our heavenly mother is, I think that there's oftentimes a degree of arrogance associated with that, or dogma. And I try to stay away from that because, other people have their belief system and I have mine, and I don't think that we need to struggle over a difference in a belief system.
And why do you say that?
Well, because the history of people is defined by conflict about various things, and one of those things is religion. And so I think that we human beings get very confused, and our ego gets into the mix of the confusion, and pretty soon we want to look better than the person next to us. And so rather than pursuing our own individual spirituality and growth, we get focused on how we look or how we can appear better than this person or get something. And it reassures us to think that another person's on the wrong path and we're on the right one.
So it's like breeding comparison.
Yes, comparison, which is, the C's are usually not a good thing. Competition, comparison, those are not really healthy for spiritual growth.
100%. Yeah, I have to agree with you on that. I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about at least some of the reviews you've been getting on Hope Lines, because it really seems like you've been getting some pretty good feedback on that. I think I've got this one by Ruben. He says, Neil speaks from where the rubber meets the road. Reality. His wisdom is practical and can be applied to our daily lives. I definitely found that to be true. Another one says, a lawyer with a message and a heart. Neil's, which is so funny. Sorry, hey, I'm going to finish this. Hang on. I'm going to go on a rabbit trail in a moment. A lawyer with a message and a heart. Neil's 18 stories, prototypical of real life, are so well written, heartfelt, and engaging that Hope Lines is hard to put down. It's by Maul. Which is so funny because literally in the preface, you talked about how you were worried. How did you say it? You said something to the effect of like you were worried that as a lawyer you didn't have a heart. And so I laughed when I saw that because I had already read your reviews, and the fact that you had written that in there, I thought that was really interesting. There it is. Here it is. It says, perhaps lawyers do not have hearts. And I was like,
Well,
that's definitely not true.
we were talking about competition a minute ago and appearance, wanting to make yourself look good. And I have to say that the legal field is full of competition and chasing good appearance. Of course, underneath that is fear that if you don't look really good in court, polished, like a bulldog, winning, then you won't get fees in a month, or your career won't succeed. So it's understandable, but that is a big part of the nature of the business.
Right. It's almost like you can't live without it, but you also can't be saturated in it. Like it can't.
Yeah, it's I mean, I've made my peace with being a lawyer, but I think every lawyer has to find their way. And I don't find enough willingness to put aside one's ego, or one's chasing after looking good, in favor of helping a child in a family law case. I don't find that often enough. Now, I know other lawyers that care deeply, and those are the ones that I befriend. So I can't pass a judgment on lawyers across the United States. But I do think the profession tends to breed negativity, criticism, competition, bad mouthing of other people, both clients and court filings and other lawyers. You get two lawyers together, and the first thing they're going to do is tell you about something stupid a third lawyer did.
Ah. Well, and
But I made my peace with it, with lawyering.
Well, based on your Google reviews and my personal experiences with you, like I feel like I'm very grateful for you being in the profession that you're in, because you have positioned yourself in a way to help people, in a way that like is extremely important. And that's one thing I really appreciate about your book, is the fact that you not only do you explain, hey, this is hey, like I think you even wrote in there at one point, how the system is broken, and you're not here to tell us how to fight the system, but rather how to have hope within the broken system. And to me, that just seems like that's way more practical, way more like exciting, in a way that like, okay, you're not completely defeated. And that's how I feel like I have perceived it in the past. So this book really helped open my eyes to see that there is hope within the system, and you don't have to just fight it by going like, holding up signs or, whatever, protesting and stuff. Like you can actually work within it in a way that's helpful for you and the people around you. So
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's more true than ever today that the truth is so often hidden underneath a lie. And so, if you look at the people that you would say are really wonderful people, even people that have been very successful now and in the past, and I don't mean success in the Kardashian or Trump kind of way where they're just constantly self-promoting. I'm talking about people that have done something really big, but really good. If you study their lives, you'll find that they've been knocked down multiple times and even went through something where they were just terribly ashamed. It's the people that tend to become really well-rounded and compassionate and do something remarkable, I think, are people that have been knocked down multiple times, got back up, and their heart just got bigger and bigger with love for humanity, but with a resilience too. So of course, but that's underneath the surface, because on the surface, it's like we're all scratching and clawing to get to the top.
Yeah. Well, I am really excited about this series that we're going to be doing and diving deep into the 18 stories that you talked about. And maybe you can give us some insight, a little bit more insight than what's in the book potentially about, different, whether maybe it's different advice or, like maybe how you came into the, how you brought in those perceptions, or maybe expand on some of these stories, because they are very interesting. And I think a lot of people would want to know a little bit more about that. If you're up for it, Neil.
Oh, I'm very excited. I mean, the reason I wrote the book was because of pain, really, because I watch people suffering and hurt. And you can't tell somebody that's on a path, you stop doing that. I mean, whether it's somebody that's about to move 500 miles away so that a good parent doesn't get to be a parent anymore, or somebody that's an addict, if you say to them, you need to stop that, you need to turn around and go a different direction, they are going to run away from you as quick as they can. They won't hear it. And so my hope is that with compassion and some subtlety and some higher power, some God, that people can at least maybe slow down on the path they're on if it's heading towards trouble. Become aware and maybe not just turn around and go the opposite direction, but at least slow down and not continue 100 miles an hour in the wrong direction. Or in the next relationship, maybe they can do better than in this one. And that was my experience. In the next relationship, I was able to do better and be faithful and be sober and come home at 5:05 p.m. and think about what my kids needed.
Yeah, exactly. And then also
There
realize,
is one story though that isn't subtle, and that's Jailhouse Dad, because there are men out there that will have babies with as many women as they're able to have sex with, without any worry about protection or what if this woman becomes pregnant. And so they have, there are men out there that are, I hate to use the term, but they're bad men, and they will have babies with anybody. They don't care. They'll move on to the next person. And so there will be all these children born that automatically don't have a father. And so that story is sort of more of a warning, and there's not a lot of subtlety in it. It's a warning to women that who you have a baby with is critically important, because babies need fathers. So that story, I think, is a little bit of a different animal than the other ones.
yeah. And I'm glad you brought it up, because that is something that, to look at as well, for sure. Because I think a lot of people forget that there's just bad people out there. And it definitely goes on both sides, because there's, especially being in Washington, right? Like I don't know, I don't want to go on it's a whole new can of worms, but like, people is very, it can be really rough out there.
It can be really rough out there in the relationship world. Absolutely.
Actually, it'd be very interesting. Actually, I just had an idea for another episode too. So anyways, first we'll focus on the book. It's a really great book. I'm excited to dive deep into it next week. or for our next episode to kind of go through one of the stories, and then kind of dive deep into that. And then if we have any questions, we can address those as well. But is there anything else you want to bring up or add before we close out for today?
Just about hope lines. One of the things that I really like about the way it turned out is you've got 18 stories, and each story really is a snapshot of problems that I see in society. And so a person can go right to that section and jump right into something that's hurting them, or perhaps they have a loved one that's having that particular problem, anxiety, domestic violence, mental illness, a breakup, parenting plan disputes, loneliness because you don't get to see your child. Whatever the case is, they can go right to that and hopefully get something out of it that takes away some of the pain. And that's the goal, is to help people, help them take their pain down a notch or two at a time.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing this with us and for
Thank
taking the
you.
time to
Thanks for the opportunity.
do this. Yeah.